So we know that we always say adjust the motivation. So adjusting the motivation here means that ideally we should engage any activity influenced by the mind of bodhicitta, or if we cannot master this, at least by renunciation. So adjusting the motivation means make sure that you are influenced by bodhicitta or renunciation. Why is it that we always keep saying, adjust the motivation, adjust the motivation? It's because since we are practicing Buddhist Dharma, whether or not an activity will become Dharma depends on the motivation. If the motivation is the correct motivation, it becomes Dharma. Otherwise, it's not. And this applies to all activities that we do, such as, for example, prostrations or making offerings or practicing generosity. You prostrate, of course, you engage in a physical activity, but there is some motivation. There is something in your mind that motivates you to do that. So if the motivation is right, then the physical activity of prostration also becomes a practice of Dharma. The same thing with making offerings, the same thing with giving something to somebody else, practicing generosity. So this is the reason why all the lamas, before they begin giving the teaching, in the beginning, there is some introduction, there is some preliminary. And in this preliminary stage, what they do is they speak in a way to inspire the students to adjust the motivation. If the motivation in the beginning is good, it means that the actual part will be good. It means that the conclusion will be good. If the beginning is good, the middle is good, the end will be good. If the beginning is not adjusted properly, if the beginning is out of sync, so to say, with the Buddhist practice, then it ruins the middle, it ruins the conclusion. Okay, so that's enough. We will adjust our motivation with the verse for going for refuge and generating bodhicitta, and then in terms of requesting prayers, we will do the Ganden Phagema. All right, so last week we mentioned that at the very beginning of the text, we find a few verses or a few lines of homage. So we say that the homage is there to make sure that the task of composition will be completed. But you might ask, how does it actually work in this way? So the verses for homage are actually words of praise. Sometimes homage also is referred to as the lines of praise. So you are praising, let's say, your root lama, or you're praising the Buddhas, you're praising the Bodhisattvas. And by doing this, you are creating merit, you're accumulating merit. As the Buddha have said, those individuals who have merit will be successful in establishing their intentions. So when the author offers homage, what he does is that he accumulates merit. And the intention that the author has at that point is to compose this particular text. And therefore, by accumulating this merit through praising, it guarantees that there will be success of the completion for the composition of the text. Okay, so first of all, we talked about the verses of homage. We have explained that. And then we say that after that, we have the homage of the translator. Okay, so for example, we say, you will find a line that says, I prostrate to youthful Manjushri, or I prostrate to the omniscient one, or I prostrate to all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Okay, the reason why this line was inserted there is so that the translation would be successful, because now we're not talking about the original author, we're talking about the translator who has received the text, whether the text is in Chinese or it's in Sanskrit and so forth, and their task is to translate this text into Tibetan. So also for the translator, they need to have that merit in order to be successful in the translation, complete the translation. Also, there is another meaning and another purpose in this line that the translator introduces. As we said in the very beginning, anyone could add any line there and say, I prostrate to whomever I like. However, at a particular point in time, there was a royal decree. So the king made a rule, right? And he says, if this, we must find a way to indicate in which Pitaka the text belongs. So it says, if this text is mainly teaching wisdom, it has to begin with the translator. The translator has to put in the words, I prostrate to youthful Manjushri. If the text belongs to Dura, it belongs to Vinaya, it has to say, I prostrate to the omniscient one. If the text belongs to the Abhidharma Pitaka, then it has to say, I prostrate to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The word that we have for Tibetan for the seal or the stamp, so the king wrote a letter, and at the end he put his stamp at the end of this letter, saying this is a royal decree. Whoever translates have to include this line. So the word that we have for that is ya, the seal, right? So this is the translator's homage, but also it is the translator's seal. The translator has to follow this royal decree. Okay, so Geshe says, I have explained this. You need to understand the initial homage is different from the line of the translator. You should understand this. In the future, you might develop your understanding of Tibetan and read many Tibetan texts. And there you will be able to identify the line that says, oh, I prostrate to youthful Manjushri, or I prostrate to the omniscient ones. And you will be able to say, I know this text belongs to this category, to this Pitaka. So after the expression of homage that we have in our text, we see that Ken Rinpoche gives a quotation from Uma Gomparapsel. So I will give you the meaning of the quotation. And the meaning of the quotation here says that when you have something that has newly generated, so it talks about a small sprout, right? So he says, when you have the small sprout, in the beginning, it is very fragile, and it is something that you have to protect very carefully so that later on it can grow and be a mighty tree. And so it says, also the bodhisattvas, when they are beginners, when they initially develop bodhicitta, they really have to protect that bodhicitta so that later on they can develop to fully enlightened Buddhas. Okay, so this is, the actual quotation of Gomparapsel says, before you see the future tree of a medicinal plant full with, complete with all the branches, the leaves, and the fruit that you so much wish to have. At the early stages, you have a little sprout. At the time when the leaves are young, they're very, very vulnerable. And if you want to see that mighty tree in the future, you have to greatly protect and cherish the young leaves. And then similarly, it says, in order to develop the great tree of Buddhahood that can protect all types of migrating beings, it is very important for bodhisattvas to cherish with great affection whatever they have generated in the beginning. So Khenpo Rinpoche takes that quotation from Gomparapsel, and he says, just as the bodhisattvas has to protect whatever they have generated there in the beginning, here what we have is that we're just beginning with this presentation of the colors, the white color, the red color. We're just beginning with the subject of Dura. So see it as the young leaves of something that needs to be protected at this early stage. So make sure you cherish it and protect it. If you do, it can develop to a mighty tree. And here the mighty tree will be your ability to understand definitions, your ability to understand the Buddhist Dharma. So it says in the future, all of us who aspire to become great teachers, we should also pay attention to this class of Dura and protect it. We're not at this level yet. We're not saying that we are, mighty scholars with great capacity right now, but if we want to see such a result in the future, right now, we really have to cherish and protect the whatever understanding of Dura we have. So, when in the Giluk Great Examination, okay, whoever, it is open, everyone who is fully qualified, who has done the study, can participate in that exam. So it's not just for monks, there are nuns as well, and there are Westerners that are included in that examination. If you have done the study, you can participate. So Geshe says, who knows, maybe in this class, the people who are attending here, maybe you have this aspiration. There is nothing stopping any of us to become great scholars, but to do that in the future, we must begin by really cherishing and protecting this Dura. So this is what Khenso Rinpoche implies here. These degrees and these attainments are open for everyone. But to do that, we have to study Dura. Okay, so the text continues by saying here, in order to benefit beginners engage this, we have a breakdown of the material into 3 levels, or you could say into 3 classes. The first one is the small path of logic that is for individual with minimum capacity. Then we have the middle path of logic that is for individuals of middling capacity. And finally, we have the great path of logic, which is for the individuals of the best intellectual capacity. So when you hear about the small path of logic, you understand that this is suitable in the beginning for people who cannot deal with too many definitions, too many details, just keep it simple in the beginning. In the monastery, Geshe was saying the first class is just called the class of the colors, the white and red colors. But of course, in this class, we study a little bit more than the white and the red colors. Okay, but the initial class is called the class of colors. So the actual words in the text of Khenso Rinpoche, it says here, for those who initially engage this path of logic. Okay, so those who initially engage, more or less is us, isn't it? For the first time, we engage this area of study. In other texts, you find more commonly the expression for beginners, to benefit beginners. Here it says to benefit those who for the first time engage this material. So as we say, this includes all of us. Because we are beginners, it is the first time we engage this material, we understand that, there will be some things we don't understand, some things we are confused about. We cannot know everything from the beginning, isn't it? Even though this might happen, Geshe says, please do not become disappointed and do not lose your courage. When you find yourself in a situation like this, you just have to persevere. As it is said, whatever we don't know, we need to train in. And if we train in that, we will become scholars, we will become proficient, right? So that's what it is. We don't know it, but it is very possible that we will become scholars in this if we persevere. So it begins by saying, first of all, the topics that are included in the path of small logic are 8. So let's enumerate them. The first one is the colors. Okay, so we understand the subject here, colors. We know about colors, painting colors, and so forth, isn't it? The second one is called established bases. So established bases here refers to existing phenomena, like, what exists, what doesn't exist, what exists in here, what exists in there, and so forth. It's about existence. So this is called established bases. The third one is called isolates. So with the isolates, we have different types of isolates. We have the self-isolate, the other isolate, the generic isolate. Then we have specific isolates, such as, for example, the isolate of a vase, the isolate of a pillar, and so forth. Okay, so that was number 3. Number 4, you can translate it as opposites. Okay, so opposites means like this. So right now it is this. Right now it is A. So if it becomes the opposite of A, what will it be? Okay, so we're looking at the opposites. Or if it becomes the opposite of not being A, what will it be? It will become A, isn't it? The opposite of not being is being. Okay. The next one is causation. So causation here, the next one is the next one is change, right? Yes. So if it changes from A to B, how will it be? If it doesn't change, how will it be? Okay. The next one is the general and the specifics. So the general here, you know how in colloquial conversation we say, oh, in general, this is the case. So we want to see the general as opposed to the specific. Okay. The next one, number 7, is concise causation. So in the small path of logic, we have a presentation of causation, causes, results, how the results are generated, and so forth, but it is a limited presentation. Later on, we have a more extensive presentation. So this one, the number 7, is the concise presentation of causation. And number 8 is substance isolates. So we will explain that when we reach that point. Okay, so the author here is about to begin the presentation of the first subject, but before he engages his own explanation, he will give us some quotation. All right, the reason for that is because the Dharma has come to Tibet from India, and therefore, if we can trace the origin of this instruction back into an Indian text, that establishes the authenticity of the advice. So if you can trace it back to one of the Indian classic texts, then you can say, oh, what I'm about to say originates from this text. Then this indicates that this material is founded in the Indian Buddhist tradition. So here we see the author giving us a quotation from Pramanavartika of Master Dharmakirti. So he gives 2 lines from Pramanavartika where it says, for the reason that I awareness is able to perceive blue and so forth individually. So is able to see different colors such as blue and so forth individually. So he says, according to this quotation from this and other texts. Okay, so it's not just one text, in one Indian text that is the source or the origin of this material. There are many texts, but he's just choosing to give a line from Pramanavartika. Okay, so the line that we have here says that I awareness perceives the blue the blue color. Okay, so we say that we see with our eyes. So within the organ of the eye, we have eye awareness. So what does eye awareness see? What does it perceive? It can only perceive colors. So eye awareness cannot perceive, for example, taste, whether something is sweet or sour. It cannot perceive any sounds. It cannot perceive any smoothness or roughness. Eye awareness can only perceive colors. Okay, then let's go into ear awareness. So within our ear, the organ of the ear, we have ear awareness. What does ear awareness perceive? It can only perceive sound. It cannot perceive any taste. It cannot perceive any roughness. It cannot perceive any color, and so forth. Then we go into the organ of the nose with the nose awareness. Nose awareness can only perceive smells, or perfumes, and so forth. It cannot perceive any sound, any color, any taste, or anything like this. We come to the mouth. We have the tongue awareness, and it can only perceive taste. It cannot perceive anything else, not smells, not sounds, not colors, no, nothing like that. And then nothing being long or short or anything. And then finally, we come to the physical awareness that is all over our body. And physical awareness is the one that can perceive roughness and smoothness. Nothing else, no sound, no color, nothing else. So this is why the second line of this verse says it can see, or it has the power to see or perceive individually. And this indicates that each one of the sense awarenesses individually has its own object, and it only perceives this, not others. Okay, so we have all this. What is important for us right now? We're going to focus on what the eyes can see. The eyes can see only two things. They can see colors and they can see shape. And for the time being, the first thing we're going to focus upon is the colors. So actually, you can see that we're actually starting with an easy subject, isn't it? Colors and shapes. These are things that our eyes can directly perceive, right? When our eyes look around, so we see different colors, we see different shapes. So it's an easy thing to approach. It's exactly for this reason that the presentation here of this subject begins with the basic colors, the root colors, the white and the red, because this is what our eyes can see. So because we can see those things directly, it's easier for us to begin our study with this. As we progress with the study, it will become a bit more involved. Okay, then we continue with the text, and it says, further, suitable to be a hue is the definition of color. Okay, so here we have something very important. We use the word color, color, color. Okay, so color is a name. We attribute a name. There is something that we are called color. Okay, okay. So what is that thing that we call color? Because color is the name. So that name has to correspond to a meaning, okay? So the meaning is suitable to be a hue. So from the beginning, what he's doing here, he says, we have two things. We have that which is suitable to be a hue. And what are we going to call that thing? We're going to call it color. So he's helping us very much remove confusion. There are many cases where we know the meaning of something, but we don't know its name. Or sometimes we might know the name, but not the meaning. Sometimes we might confuse the two together. So by explaining suitable to be a hue, giving us this first, which is the meaning, the author is trying to clarify the situation for us. So remove the confusion. Okay. Now, if that means that if someone didn't know what the word color refers to, then you could explain and say, oh, color is that which is suitable to be a hue. And if someone said, but I don't understand what does it mean to be suitable to be a hue? It means, you can explain it further, suitable to indicate hue. All right. So in this way, it's all clear. There should be no confusion. Okay, so what happens here, you see that we give a term, which is the name, and also we give the meaning. And what we want to do is we want to introduce, we want to link. Okay, this is the name or this is the term that refers to that particular meaning. So get the two together. So understand how one describes the other, right? So Geshe was saying this is what we do in Tibetan. Geshe says, I don't know Sanskrit, but previous scholars and previous teachers and those who understand much more of Sanskrit, they say that in the Sanskrit language, actually in the word, in a single word, you can have both the name and the meaning. So Geshe says, I don't know Sanskrit. If one of you in the audience is a great scholar of Sanskrit, maybe you know about this. But, don't interject or don't, put blame in my presentation, because this is a Tibetan presentation. It's not the Sanskrit presentation. All right. So anyway, if any of the students become scholar in Sanskrit, maybe you can have an input in this discussion. Okay. So as you see here, we have the definition. We have the term that explains what is defined, and the two are linked together. So this is what is happening here. Okay, so when we use this expression where we say the definition of color is such and such, what we're saying here is the meaning of color. So the expression, the definition of something, is giving you the meaning of something. So the meaning of color, the definition of color, is that which is suitable to indicate a hue. Okay, so with this, hopefully we have removed confusion about what color is. And you might be thinking, all right, we just spent 1 hour and I walked away with just one definition. Maybe that's not enough, for 1 hour. But Geshe says no, because you can apply this part into all the colors. All right, so what is the definition of the color red? The definition of the color red is that which is suitable to indicate the hue red. What is the definition of the yellow? The definition of the yellow color is that which is suitable to indicate yellow hue. What is the definition of black color? It is that which is suitable to indicate the black hue, and so on and so forth. So you apply the same part that's suitable to indicate hue, and you change the color, basically. And in this way, you can understand the definition of every color that exists. So how much ignorance have we removed today? The ignorance in relation to all the colors. How many definitions did we understand today? Not just one definition. We understood the definitions of all the colors, right? So we are already great scholars. We're very, very wise in terms of the colors and their definition, all right? Great achievement in 1 hour. Okay, so how many colors are there? There are hundreds of thousands of colors, and we have removed confusion or ignorance with respect to those hundreds of thousands of colors, meaning we have increased our wisdom by hundreds of thousands of times. So this is how we proceed closer and closer towards to Buddhahood, isn't it? So today we covered a little bit of distance, getting closer to that. After the definition, the text continues and say, if we classify them, we have two, the main or the root colors and the secondary colors. Okay, so it's very important to give a classification, because if we don't give a classification, the only other option would be here to list every color that exists. And even if we were listing colors for 3 days, still we would not finish. There are many, obscure and bizarre colors, right? There are millions of colors. Okay, so we don't want to name each color. So the next best thing is to give a classification. Usually when we give a classification, there can be classification in terms of purpose, or it can be classification in terms of the type. And here is classification in terms of the type. So it says we have many colors, but in terms of their type, there are two types. You have the main colors and you have the secondary colors. Now, another example, if we classify all individuals, there are two types. You have ordinary beings and you have Arya beings. Another example, if we classify cars, all the cars that exist, okay, there are two types. Cars in Singapore and cars outside of Singapore. So that covers every car, isn't it? So this is what happens here. We give a classification by type. We classified it in two. We say there are many colors. They all come under these two categories. It will either be a main color or it will be a secondary color. Okay, so it's very important to understand here the classification. As we say, it's a twofold classification by type, and that means that all the colors that exist, they are included in these two categories. It will either be a root color or it will be a secondary color. There's no color that exists and is not classified as a main color or as a secondary color. No color escapes this twofold classification, okay? It's very important. Having given this, now, because we know the definition of a color, someone could ask you, what is the definition of the main color? Or what is the definition of a secondary color? Even if you do not know what colors what list of colors comes under the root or the main colors, even if you don't know the individual names of the colors, you could still give the definition. You know how to make the definition of the root colors. So you see how important it is to get the initial definition, how that increases your knowledge, and then you can apply this to knowledge. And then, of course, later on, someone will introduce you, there is this and this and this color, it comes under the root color, so now you know the definition, you can put the two together. Okay, so it's already starts working. It's already clear. All right, so you should be able, Geshe says, to give me the definition of the root color. We have said the definition of the color is that suitable to be a hue. The definition of black color is that which is suitable to be a black hue. Okay, now give me the definition of the root color. So you can see that it's not very difficult. We apply the same formula, basically the same logic to move from one definition to the next. Okay, so here what happens, we have come to the point where we understand the meaning, but we're not 100% clear about the name. Okay, so we use this name, root colors, but we don't know what counts as a root color. Who is a root color? Okay, we understand the meaning because we said that is that which is suitable to be a main hue. Okay, but who is there? Who belongs there? So now we're going to explain who is or what is the main colors. There are only 4 of them: the blue, the yellow, the white, and the red. Whatever color is not any of these 4, it means it's not a root color, it's not a main color, and therefore is a secondary color. Okay? So now you have come to understand the meaning, but also the term, the name. Okay? So you can see how we apply the term, how we apply a particular name into the meaning, and how we introduce and we link one to the other. Okay. Once you understand the short list of the 4 main colors, you have understood now, it has been explained to you, everything else is secondary. So it should be easy here to understand. There's a logic, in a sense, there's a mechanism that links the meaning that's suitable to be a hue, right, with a particular name, and the name is color. Okay, so since we have divided colors in terms of type into 2, we must have a meaning for the root color, and then we have a meaning for the secondary color. If you look at the root colors, it's almost like a menu. You press the menu, and what you have under there, you have 4, isn't it? There's only 4: the blue, the yellow, the white, and the red. Okay, so you take the meaning of each one and you apply it to that. So in most cases, we actually know the meaning, but we don't know the term. We don't know the name for that particular thing. So if I start saying, look, I've got this object that is got kind of like a belly, and it's got a wide belly, and then it becomes a little bit thinner as it goes down, and then it has a flat base, and it becomes sort of like a container. And if I put water in it, it will contain the water, right? So I know the function of that thing, right? I know the meaning. I know I can describe the shape, I can describe how it holds water and so forth, but I don't know its name. What do you call this thing? And someone comes and says, the object that has a wide belly and then becomes a bit thinner, it tapers down and it has a flat base and it holds water, that thing, we call it a vase. So now I have everything, right? Before I was just going around with a description of an object that didn't have a name, but now I have got the name. So now I'm linking the name with the meaning. Okay, so actually exactly what we were describing before is the definition of the bumpa, of the vase. The definition of the vase is the wide belly with a flat base that is able to hold liquids. This is the definition of the vase. So this long worded part is the definition. This is the meaning, isn't it? And the other one, the short word, is the term, and this is the definiendum, or the object defined. Okay, so we will be using this quite a lot. The definition of this is that, the definition is that, the definition is that. So when you hear the definition, it gives you the meaning, right? The definition of something. So that term there, that is the term, that is the name, that is the object defined. All right, so today you were also given the definition of the vase. So in the future, if someone asks you, what does vase mean? What does that word mean? Now, you should be able to say, it is that thing with a bulbous shape and a big belly and a flat bottom that is able to hold water. So you could write down this definition and keep it there for the future. Okay, in English, it's a long definition. Anyway, Geshe was saying, I gave you the definition and you didn't write it down, which I take it as a sign that you are also intelligent and you'll be able to remember it. Okay, so Geshe said, okay. Today, really, the main class was about the definition of the color. We didn't progress much more than that, but it is important that you reflect on what you have heard tonight, okay? So whatever was explained today, you have gone through the first stage, which is listening. You heard that information. So you have wisdom derived from listening, but that is not enough. What we have to do is we go back and contemplate, in a sense, revise, right? We have to think, we have to reflect about what we have heard. And in this way, we develop the wisdom derived from thinking. And then we meditate and we develop more and more familiarity with that thinking, and that induces the wisdom derived from meditation. So this is how we can progress. Geshe was saying, don't do like we did. We used to carry our text and go to the room of our teacher with our text, and the teacher would teach whatever he would teach. And then we finish the class and go back to our rooms and just throw the text on the table and never look at it again. So Geshe says, don't do it like this. Is not the good way to progress in your study or become a Geshe or something like that. All right, the opposite of that. Okay, so we finished for tonight and we offer a short mandala prayer.
Geshe, one question. So Geshe, because I think today we went through mainly with the definition of colors. So like for example, the black color, the definition of black color would be like suitable, like one that is suitable for black hue, right? So what I cannot reconcile in my mind is we are using the word black to define black.
No, actually you have to use the word black in the definition of the black color, because as we say, the definition is that which is suitable to be a black hue. But when you expand this, is that which is suitable to indicate black hue. So someone should be able to point to your eyes to a particular patch that is painted black and say, you see this hue? This is black. So it is suitable to be demonstrated, to be shown to you. It is suitable to be indicated to your eye awareness so that your eyes can see it. So suitable to see black, suitable to be perceived as a black hue. So you have to, for each color, we have to use the individual name, black for black, green for green, and so forth. Okay, so here we have started with this definition where we're following, let's say, the norm, what generally applies. And what generally applies is that you don't know the term, you don't know the name, but you understand the meaning. So first we give the meaning, and then we give a name, and then you link the two together and you say, oh, now I get it. It is not always the case. Sometimes with some things that are more simple, we know the meaning first, and more or less we already know, we know the name first, and more or less we understand the meaning. Okay, so to give you another definition, knowing is the definition of mind. Okay, this here is quite simple because knowing or awareness, and mind, almost we understand simultaneously. It's not the case that you have to understand one first and then being introduced to the other. So for some things, you don't necessarily have to follow this order, but the general order is that first you explain the meaning and then you give the term that describes that meaning. And in your question, there is actually meaning in your question, because if we just look at the definition that says suitable to be the black hue, when you know what is suitable to be black hue, it indicates that you know black. You understand black, all right? But what the definition is trying to say is there is the black color should be demonstrable to your eyes. Who is going to perceive the black color? It's not your nose, it's not your ears, it's not your tongue, right? It's going to be your eyes. So there must be something that is suitable to be demonstrated so that it is perceived by your eyes as being the black color. So this is what the definition is trying to say. So Geshe said, we talk about the term or the name, okay? And we explain, Geshe made a comment in the beginning that Sanskrit language has this particular characteristic that when they use a word, the word indicates the name, but also the meaning, right? So in Sanskrit, and those who understand Sanskrit and have studied Sanskrit should have this experience. By given just one word, that word gives you simultaneously the name, but at the same time you understand the full meaning of that object, right? Of that entity. But in other languages, not in Sanskrit, and definitely in Tibetan here, we have to go through, first of all, understanding the meaning, and then saying, okay, that thing that behaves in this way, that has these characteristics, I am going to call it, and then we apply a term. And therefore, we need to have this process. We need to go through this process of joining the meaning with the name. So this is why we have the definition, which is the name, then the meaning, referring to the object defined. That is the term. Yeah. So when we attribute names, there are two ways of, or there are two types of names. One is automatically revealing or automatically established, which is, as we said, in the case of the Sanskrit language, you get the name, you get the meaning, right, together. And the other one is the case where the meaning is not the same as the name. And actually, they're quite different. And it's going to take a while for us to link the two together. So this is a different type. This is called the name that follows after the meaning to describe the meaning. Different type of name. So very good you asked the question, because you see, there's a lot from your side to ask and clarify. And Geshe says there's a lot from his side to explain. There's a lot to say. Okay, unfortunately, today we have to stop here because there is talk, but in general, it's very good you ask questions.